Welcome back to a reading of Ladies and Cowboys by me, Akili Rose. Today we are going to be looking at Chapter 3. So just hang on a moment and we'll get started on that. Chapter 3. New Times, New Hell. I did not have time to turn to see who was speaking to me before something metal hit the back of my head. The force of the blow was just enough to stun me. I went down with a pained yelp. I tried to reach up to clutch at my head, but hands grabbed my wrists and forced them together. Ugh! I grunted, dazedly trying to struggle. A second person grabbed my chin and shoved some sort of disgusting cloth into my mouth. He tied a second cloth between my lips to secure the first. I choked and gagged at the sudden invasion. A rough rope was tightly secured around my wrists, and my captors snickered to each other. "Wasn't expecting to find something like this out here," one sneered. It was a man who had my face. He twisted my head from side to side, examining me closely. My head was throbbing in pain where I had been hit, but I was becoming clear-minded again. I could not seem to catch my breath. At my wrists, a rope man shifted to bind my ankles in the same manner as my wrists. I kicked wildly, trying to tear myself free, but it was useless. A rough smack to the side of my head warned me to stay still. "Enough of that, stupid wench. Either be good or I'll give you a reason to squirm," the man directly in front of me threatened. "Let's take her to meet the others. We'll get a good price from Frank," the other said, looking at his companion. I was hauled up off of the ground and ruthlessly thrown over the stranger's shoulder. The pair set off on foot, cackling to each other. I shifted, testing the strength of the ropes and trying to spit out the gag, with little success. In some ways, my kidnapping was worse than when the river had been bearing down on me. At least then I had a bit of a time to react, and I knew something was coming. The man carrying me paused to readjust his grip on me, groping at my body a little as he did. A squeak of protest sprang from my throat, and the men started laughing all over again. "Cute little thing, ain't she? I ain't think no one would complain if we tried her out first," the first man commented. My stomach heaved and my eyes began to water all over again. I choked back the stomach bile that threatened to come up and suffocate me. "She's got a finer ass than my donkey," the one carrying me snorted. I felt his palm smack my butt and I cried out unintentionally. There was more laughter. I was not sure why they grabbed me or what they were planning to do with me, but none of it could be good. I tried to work the gag out of my mouth with my tongue to no avail as my mind raced on what I should do. Running would be useless. These men knew what they were doing when they caught me. It was completely dark, and both men moved without any light, dodging between bramble, ducking behind cacti. They were careful where they stepped, but the one carrying me did not care at all what happened to me. Branches struck at the side of my face. My hair got tangled in something and then ripped free. I bit back my pain, knowing it would have only urged them on. After a long time of horrible travel, I was finally dumped on top of a boulder. I lay perfectly still as my head spun and blood rushed back to it. My vision was clouded with darkness to the point I could not even see the stars or moon. I thought I might have passed out at first, but I could still hear my captors. "Might want to keep this pretty thing for ourselves. Not often we catch one like this out here alone," the one who had been carrying me commented as he moved closer. He grabbed me by my shoulder and rolled me over so I was face up. The rough stone surface bit into my skin, but I dared not shift into a more comfortable position. My eyes started to adjust, but the two still did not set up any sort of light. A deep chill was settling into my bones. "Frank said he needs pretty girls for the new place. Don't even think about it, you dolt. If he found out, he'd make you pay for her," the other man snapped, smacking his companion across the back of his head. The first man cussed out the second, and there was a short squabble between them. I was hoping they might pull their guns out on each other while also dreading the possibility. No such thing happened, and they instead settled back down. "You sure there was no other people there?" the first man asked. "Nah, was only one horse at the camp. Baby girl must have been thinking she could find a rich sod out here to marry." "Huh, sweetheart," the second man cooed. He reached down and patted my cheek before bursting out into laughter. My gaze moved from face to face, trying to come up with a plan to escape. I was losing feeling in my hands and feet from the tight ropes. There was no fight left in me after the grueling day I had just been through. A subtle movement in the darkness caught my attention, and I looked past the men for a moment. They did not seem to notice the fact that I was distracted at all. Or, more likely, they didn't care. A shadow was crouched low beside another boulder. It was obviously a human. I shifted a little as I tried to figure out if they were friend or foe. Given the fact that they were absolutely silent and mostly hidden made me hope they might be a friend. The person lurched forward with startling speed. They cleared the distance between themselves and the two men fluidly. In what seemed like under a second, the figure was behind one of the men. There was a gleam of moonlight reflecting off metal and a loud gurgling scream. Warm, almost hot liquid splattered across my face as one of the men dropped to the ground, thrashing and flailing about. The second man turned to face the attacker, his hand grabbing for the gun at his hip, but the other was lightning fast and yanked out their own gun. There were two deafening bangs, and the kidnapper fell, unmoving. The night fell silent as I stared in absolute horror at the lumps that lay just below me. The newcomer was still for a few seconds before he holstered his gun and approached me with a knife. I held my breath and shut my eyes, not sure if I was to be his next victim. My fears of being killed were swiftly abated as warm hands in leather gloves grabbed my ankles and cut them free. The man pulled me up into a sitting position and pressed me against his chest. His arms reached around my trembling form to cut my wrists free as well. Lastly, he freed my mouth of the gag and lifted me up into his embrace. I was taken a short distance away and then put back on the ground. I was reluctant to leave the safety of his embrace. The man knelt down in front of me and pulled black gloves off of his hands before he placed them in my hair. "Are you injured?" came Killian's cooling voice. I could only shake my head, unable to find my voice. 2 men had just died in front of me in mere seconds. Their killer was completely unconcerned and treated the entire situation as if he had just squashed a pair of spiders. His fingers in my hair found the bump where I had been hit by the gun. Even in the darkness, thanks to our close proximity, I could see his lips drop into a sterner frown than his usual expression. He seemed irritated. "I need you to wait here and be absolutely silent. Don't move," he told me after a moment. He withdrew his hands from my hair, his warmth leaving me, and put his gloves back on. I watched silently as he turned away from me, looking for something over by where my kidnappers lay dead. That's when I realized he was listening to something. I found that I could hear hoofbeats somewhere in the distance. The fear from everything going on had not even started to fade, and based simply by Killian's own tension, I knew those approaching us were not friendly. The second he pulled his gun out, my breath caught in my throat, and I curled up into myself. I was smart enough to guess at what was coming. I plugged my ears with my hands and tightly shut my eyes. It was a long time before anything started. Killian did not immediately start shooting at the newcomer. I was almost convinced nothing was going to happen at all. I was about to drop my hands when 2 shots exploded from nearby where I huddled. There was a responding shot that landed somewhere nearby. It was close enough I felt sand and rock hit me. I threw myself to the side where I knew there was more cover from the boulder, doing my best not to scream and cry out. There was one final gunshot. This one I knew was from Killian due to its closeness to me. The desert fell into silence, or at least it sounded that way. Even though I had my ears covered, I was still mildly deafened from the blasts. I felt rather than heard Killian's approach. The loose soil below us made that easy. My first instinct was to get up and run from this man who had killed at least 3 people. He had saved me twice now, but what did that mean? What if I made him mad? Would he turn his gun on me? "Lottie." His voice was just loud enough I could hear him, despite my hopefully temporary deafness. I forced my eyes open and turned to look at him. My eyes were wide with fear and my mouth gaped open like some idiot, unable to figure out what I needed to do. Killian knelt beside me and brought out a lantern from his belt. He lit it and placed it on the ground between us. He then pulled a black rag from his pocket and handed it to me. These absolutely calm and normal actions made my misgivings settle a little. I got myself stiffly out of the dirt and reached out for the rag with trembling hands. Killian had the patience of a saint. He stayed rock still until I received the cloth. It was only then that I remembered the liquid that splashed across my face moments before. Terror and grief hit me in waves, making me ill until the point of exhaustion. I threw myself away as my stomach heaved. I was not able to hold back this time and vomited. I choked out sobs when I could. With one hand I wiped desperately to get the blood off my face, rubbing my skin raw as I was fully convinced it had stained my skin. My other curled into a fist in the dirt and was the only thing keeping me from falling over. Killian was quiet through the entire ordeal until I could get a hold of myself. By the time I was able to function again, the lantern's light had dimmed considerably. During my meltdown, Killian had moved to sit beside me against the boulder, a glass bottle in his hand, his hat low over his eyes. I refused to be embarrassed as I sat back against the boulder. I was weak with exhaustion. He glanced at me before he took a swig of the drink and got to his feet. "I need to bring them with me. We'll go to Bull's Reach and decide what to do with you from there." "Why are you even helping me so much? I know I said I could pay you before, but it was a lie," I demanded with a shaking voice. Killian fell silent for a moment and stared out into the desert. I started to feel sure he would not answer when he finally sighed. "I saw where you came from, out of the sky, from nowhere, but I've never believed in angels. I still don't. I'm going to find out what you are." "I'm just as human as you are, as they were," I protested, throwing my arm in the direction of the dead men. "You're defending them, after what they did to you, after what they were planning to do?" Killian asked with dark amusement clear in his tone. I fell silent. Back home I had often felt that certain types of criminals were not punished enough. Now that I had just experienced such an end for that kind of person, I was not so sure. Even if they had been planning to do something awful to me. "Enough. We're going back to camp. We can figure out the rest tomorrow," Killian commanded. I thought again about running from him, but I was starting to realize that I needed help. If I didn't get kidnapped again, maybe I'd get attacked by some animal or lose my way forever. I needed Killian. Or at the very least, I needed him to help me find someone who could take me back to that riverbed. That was Chapter 3 of Ladies and Cowboys. The book itself will be out March 1st, 2024, on Amazon in ebook form and paperback form. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it so far. Yes, again, this is a reminder that this version of the book you're reading is an older version. There are some minor changes and edits done to the version that you will get should you purchase the book. So just be aware that there are some pretty obvious things that need editing, but they have been hopefully fixed. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good one.